Hi folks, so here we are at the Leo full moon, which occurs tonight at 11:34 p.m. Pacific time. Now, I've seen the time reported as 11:33 or 11:34. You're welcome to take your pick, and if you're really that intent at having a nice looking number, you can go with 11:33 if you like. It may well be accurate. When I was looking at the charts and doing some of my preparation work, I felt it was closer to 11:34. We will let that be. This is an important full moon for a variety of reasons. But before I launch into why, I do want to reiterate that there's something about a full moon in a fixed sign like Leo that gives the feeling that it will fix something into place, or whatever happens will somehow be permanent. And what I want to remind you is that nothing is really permanent. So while this particular full moon may give a sense of bringing something to completion or bringing something to a head, just know that it's a feeling and something may well reach some sort of a culmination point, but the story is not done. The story is never done. It just keeps going. We have been talking since October, November of 2019 about the nature of the astrology in place. And the nature of the astrology in place has meant that alternate signs, Scorpio, Capricorn, Pisces, have been dealing with a fair amount of intensity. And when we talk about Capricorn, we've also got to talk about the sign of Cancer, its opposite sign, because with the intensity in Capricorn, it has had to do with eclipses. And you had the new moon solar eclipse in Capricorn on December the 25th, 2019, but you also had the lunar eclipse in Cancer on January the 10th. So Scorpio, Capricorn, Pisces. Scorpio season is pretty much done. It was quick, it was rapid, it was intense. The planets flew through Scorpio in October and November, and we had a Mercury retrograde. And it was around that time that, as planets were moving into Sagittarius, I tried to introduce the idea that the other set of alternate signs, specifically Sagittarius and Aquarius, action was playing out, but in normal ways, and in many respects one could argue in welcome ways, as a distraction from where the intensity and the heaviness was occurring. A welcome distraction, perhaps. And that the planetary movements had a kind of a normal, regular feeling. The Sun and Mercury always tend to travel somewhat close together. Venus is relatively close too, and it just so happens that Mars, at least till pretty recently, has been following into these planets' footsteps. Now that is going to start to change because these planets are separating from Mars more and more, at least for the time being. With Sagittarius season, I've also done a video on the fact that the Mars transit in Sagittarius has been an important one, because wherever Mars is, and particularly when it's in a sign like Sagittarius, and it's going to be in Capricorn and in Scorpio, it is important. And so that video is there, it's still current, it's still relevant, as being a set of tasks that has been occupying us, hopefully positively, although that depends on where Sagittarius sits in your chart, if it is in the 8th house, or if it is in the 12th house, or perhaps in the 6th house. It depends on the individual's chart, but wherever Sagittarius is, a certain set of activities is still current till about February the 17th. There's a video on Mars in Sagittarius that you're welcome to check out. With Capricorn, we've talked about the intensity being related to the eclipses. With Aquarius, we're still very much dealing with Aquarian topics, and it has to do with where Aquarius sits in your chart as well, and what house it occupies, and what those themes are. The new moon occurred 2 weeks ago, because we are now in 2 weeks after the full moon in Leo, and we're still very much in Aquarius season. The last video I did before this one were related to Mercury in Pisces and various planetary transits in Pisces and that intensity building. Okay, so there's intensity in the signs of Capricorn, Pisces, increasingly in Pisces, and there is normal, hopefully somewhat happier activity in the signs of Sagittarius and Aquarius that gives you guys a bit of a break. This trend is going to stop after Pisces, because once we get into Aquarius and then Gemini, it's like alternate signs start to bear the brunt of some of the intensity, but it's not quite as clean. It's not quite as clean. When we've dealt with a retrograde in Scorpio and a full moon in Cancer and increasing intensity in Pisces, in water signs, not only are we dealing with things that somehow got kick-started in 2015, 2016, as I explained in my last video, but a lot of these things have been producing a tremendous amount of emotional wear because they're in emotional signs. Some of the intensity is playing out in very emotional, in emotional parts of our chart. Let me just put it that way. This is a general reading. When I use terminology like that, I can, as an astrologer, find myself catching myself, but I will leave it at that. Then we are coming out of the eclipses. Well, it's 2015, 2016. Then we had Mercury retrograde last March or April. Then we had Mercury retrograde in Scorpio. Then we've just had the eclipses. Now we have pressure mounting in Pisces. And today we have the Leo full moon. And for all intents and purposes, it is giving us an opportunity to assert ourselves in some area of our lives in a welcome way. Now, this too depends on where this full moon is occurring in your chart. There's an invitation, and you may have felt this building over the last 48 hours anyway, and this may still hold true for much of tomorrow. So 48 hours before a full moon, 24 hours after a full moon is when the impact of the full moon is felt greatly. If you have been going through something and feel like you are at a place where you're ready to express yourself some way, in a leonine manner, much like a lion would, is it a lion's roar? Is it a regal quality to communications? Is it a putting something to bed? Is it addressing something? Is it drawing a line in the sand? Is it the normal things related to full moons apply? Something may come to culmination or completion. There may be an offer. There may be something that is somehow done or completed, although I'm going to use the word completed with this particular full moon and a few other lunations coming up with a grain of salt because Mercury goes retrograde. So whatever thing you think is completed now is not really completed until March or April. So just have that in the back of your mind as well. This is what I meant by there's something about this full moon that is going to make, let me just put it in a sentence. There's something about this full moon, and if this is what is happening for you, trust it and lean into it and enjoy it, because much of the astrology is not enjoyable right now. So if you have an opportunity to draw the line in the sand somewhere, and act a little bit leonine or very leonine and express yourself and assert your boundaries and get some clarity and put up a fight for something, this is the time to do it. This is the day to do it. Then if you've been feeling that the universe is giving you an invitation and an opening in signs or the opportunity to act, take it, do it, finish it, complete it, with the understanding in the back of your mind that nothing is ever finished or completed. But the invitation is there. This has the potential to be a happy full moon when it comes to some sort of a lion roar, line assertion expression, because we've been dealing with so many energies that have kept us suppressed, that have affected our hearts, that have affected our emotions, that have kept us way down, that have made us go inside and internally. It's really nice to have a full moon that may have a sense of rebellion to it. I prefer the word assertion, and with the sign of Leo, playfulness is also important. So the assertion doesn't have to be Capricornian, it doesn't have to be Taurian, it doesn't have to be Earth sign, it doesn't have to be police-like. But it could be, hey, let's just clear the air on this. Let's just talk about this. Let's just see if we can't do this. Kind of a friendly, playful lion. Maybe a little sneaky lion. You know, all of a sudden the image of Shere Khan in Jungle Book is coming up. He's a villain, and he's a tiger. But there is this kind of, play, joke, be feline, you know, flirty prankster, harness a little bit of that energy as you kind of need to draw the line somewhere. But it is assertive and it is expressive. And it's coming around at a time when the astrology has not given us a lot of room for assertion or expression or communication. So if over the past 24 hours you feel something has been building that allows you to do this, 48 hours, and if for the next 24 hours this continues, take it. It might be an important next step. This full moon is trying the planet Mars, a little weaker than I would like it to be, but again, it gives you the emphasis and the oomph to get something done. With a certain amount of, I'll use the word assertion. For some of you, it may have to be aggression. Other things related to the full moon might apply. There may be emotion involved. There may be heightened sensitivities involved. There might be yelling, screaming, crying. Beware of sort of violent, emotional, or intense behavior. It's not something I'm recommending. At the same time, pay attention to what is happening if it's coming from an emotional or vulnerable place, so you can take stock of where somebody else is at or where you yourself are at. Something is made visible. The moon, the disk of the moon becomes clear. The sun, our soul, our higher self, is always shining. The moon, our emotional and intuitive side, and Mercury, our thinking side, are always subject to confusion and clarity, and confusion and clarity. Mercury goes retrograde 3 times a year, very close to the sun. Is about to do so again. Okay, at the risk of repeating myself, take advantage of this full moon that is occurring. If the full moon occurs in certain parts of your chart that are quieter, this video may not resonate that entirely. It's helpful to know where the sign of Leo sits in your chart, where the sign of Aquarius sits in your chart, because the sun is in Aquarius and the moon is opposing it in Leo, what subjects, what houses they occupy and what they stand for, and therefore what this full moon might be about to some extent. But a tantrum, assertion, clarity, as long as it is manageable and does not get you into trouble or does not become violent and offensive, may be in order to some extent to either clear the air or draw some lines that need to be drawn, because somewhere the heart has been suppressed for a while and we're entering into murky waters again. So enjoy this full moon as best you can. Be assertive, but somewhere in the back of your mind, continue to remain watchful, because we're entering now into a summer of retrogrades gradually. I mean, it's not even spring yet, but we have Mercury going retrograde. Then after that, with a bit of a break, we'll have Venus going retrograde. Of course, Jupiter will go retrograde. Saturn and Pluto and Neptune, all those planets go retrograde a fair amount anyway every year. So does Jupiter. But then we have Mars going retrograde in the sign of Aries and being there for an awfully long time in the second half of this year. So the energies, astrologically, I've talked about this before. Growth and progress happens in spurts, and it lays the foundation and it pushes you out into something. And then there's a certain amount of catch-up that's needed before you have these periods of forward movement. Periods of forward movement are fewer, rarer, and more intense and more exciting than we think. We think that forward movement is occurring all the time. But the planetary structures and the way we have these windows of forward movement where not all planets are retrograde and the planets are moving fast are fewer and further between than we think. And it happens, and then there's a settling that needs to happen, and then there's another push, and then there's a settling that needs to happen. Enjoy this full moon. It gives you the opportunity to be assertive, perhaps creative, communicative, to start to become, here's the word, it gives you the opportunity to be proactive about something. And it takes you temporarily out of emotionally suppressed waters. Get in that boat and take advantage of it. Okay, if you found this video useful, share it, communicate about it, talk about it, tell your friends about it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button so that you are notified every time I do a video. My email address is in the description area. You can contact me if you have questions about personal readings, or if you would like me to make you an easy-to-use version of your chart. Something like that. Whatever. Over and out.